Hey there, grocery prices have been extreme recently and I've been trying to cut back on my grocery budget. So today I'm going to be showing you 5 more dinners that you can make for right around $5. I know this isn't going to be easy just because grocery prices are really high at the moment, but I am going to be showing you meals that are nourishing, filling, and your entire family will love them. So let's go get started. To kick us off today, we are making this Spanish rice soup, and while I'm at the grocery store, I am going to be showing you the products that I got to stay right around $5. I first grabbed this vegetable seasoning blend, and it's full of onions, celery, red peppers, and green peppers, so for the price, it's a pretty good deal. Next, I headed down the bean aisle, and I grabbed a can of black beans, or you could grab a can of kidney beans or pinto beans, really whatever you like. Now we're going to be grabbing a can of corn, and as you see, this little can of corn, it has about 8.5 ounces in it. It is 54 cents. And so I put that can down and I looked further and I found this normal sized can of corn. It's about 14.5 ounces. It's only 50 cents. So this bigger can of corn is cheaper than the smaller can of corn. So just keep an eye out for what's the best deal. The last thing we're going to be grabbing is this bag of Knorr Spanish rice. Let's head home and get cooking. To my large Dutch oven, I added a tablespoon of olive oil right in there. Once the oil was hot, I added my onions and my peppers, and I am going to give this a stir and let these vegetables cook for about 5 minutes. Now we're going to be adding in our drained and rinsed can of black beans, followed by our drained can of corn. Then you're going to add in the bag of Knorr Spanish rice that we grabbed from the store. After you add that in, go ahead and add in about a tablespoon of taco seasoning. And if you don't have taco seasoning on hand, I totally understand that. But if you have like other seasonings on hand, like cumin, garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, and paprika, you could add those seasonings in as a substitute for the taco seasoning. The last thing I added in was 6.5 cups of water. I gave this a stir and I let this simmer covered on my stove for about 7 to 10 minutes. I did stir this often so the rice didn't stick to the bottom of my pot. But once the rice was tender, I served our soup up. When you go and make this soup, you will not believe that it only costs about $3 and some change to throw together. It is just that good and flavorful. We topped ours with some toppings we had on hand, like tomatoes, cheese, sour cream, guacamole, and lime. But if you don't have any extra toppings on hand, this soup is delicious alone as well. I really think this ramen stir-fry recipe will surprise you, so to get it started, we're first going to be grabbing a frozen bag of stir-fry vegetables. I'm grabbing this deluxe bag. It has frozen broccoli, green beans, carrots, peppers, and more veggies in it. It is a delicious bag of vegetables. Next, we're going to be grabbing 3 packets of ramen. This is the only ramen brand my grocery store has right now, and we think it's pretty good. And then if you don't have soy sauce on hand, you could grab this great value bottle of soy sauce for only about $1.58, so you will be able to stay on budget. I didn't grab that bottle just because I do have soy sauce on hand. So to get this recipe started, to the pan on my stove, I added a tablespoon of olive oil, and once my oil was hot, I added our stir-fry vegetables right onto the pan, and I'm going to cook them for about 5 to 7 minutes to cook those veggies through. And while we have our veggies cooking up, I am going to start on our ramen. So to this pot of boiling water, add all 3 bags of ramen, save the seasoning packets to the side. And I do want to let you know, if you have more people you're feeding, you could always buy another bag of ramen or 2. And if you have less people you're feeding, just don't buy as many bags of ramen. But now that our ramen is cooked through, I am going to drain the ramen. Now add the ramen into the pan where we cooked the vegetables and then add about 1/4 a cup of low sodium soy sauce. I do recommend the lower sodium soy sauce just so this isn't as salty. Then add in 1/4 a cup of water and just one of those ramen seasoning packets. You only need one, trust me, this will be super flavorful, but give this a stir and let this cook together for a couple of minutes and then you could serve this up. Here's my bowl of food. I sprinkled mine with a little bit of sesame seeds, and let me tell you, this is so unbelievably good. It does not taste like you're trying to be on a budget, and this is super healthy and filling. Now we're making this magnificent sausage and egg casserole. So the first thing we're going to be grabbing from the store might seem a little odd and silly, but just trust this recipe, trust this process. It's going to turn out great. I first grabbed a can of Crescent rolls. Then I headed over to the meat area and I grabbed some sausage. You could buy the ground sausage like this, but we personally like the sausage links for this recipe. They're a little bit more expensive, but we really like them for this specific recipe. Then I headed over to the egg area and I was just completely shocked about those egg prices. They have really gone up recently, holy moly. And for 6 eggs, it is $3.03 at my Walmart. I don't know about your guys' grocery stores, but I just couldn't believe this, so I decided to go get my eggs at Smith's. Smith's wasn't too far from the Walmart I was shopping at, so I kind of wanted to see the egg prices there compared to Walmart. Smith's is kind of like a Kroger store here in Utah, so I just grabbed these dozen eggs for $4.89. It was a little bit cheaper here at this Kroger store, so I was happy to see that. Now let's head back to my house and get started. The first thing we're going to begin on is cooking up our sausage. I'm only using half of this package of sausage. Just go ahead and brown that sausage up right now. While our sausage is cooking away, we are going to crack our eggs into this bowl. So in this bowl, I cracked 6 eggs. The nice thing about this recipe is you only need 6 eggs, so that does make it a little bit more budget friendly. I whisked those eggs up, breaking the yolks, and then I added in my seasonings, a half a teaspoon of onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, pepper, and salt. Just whisk those seasonings in. You will need a 9x13 baking dish for this recipe, so I grabbed my baking dish. I sprayed it with nonstick spray just because you don't want the egg to stick to the baking dish. Then I grabbed my crescents and I am going to unroll them and place them onto the bottom of the baking dish. I'll set this to the side. Now that we have our sausage cooked through, I am going to slice it into discs and then kind of chop it into smaller pieces. You could really cut your sausage into however big or however small pieces you'd like. And then after I was finished with that, I grabbed my baking dish and I'm going to place the sausage over the top of the crescents. After you're finished with that and kind of spreading that sausage out, pour the egg mixture over the top and bake this in a preheated oven to 350 degrees for about 22 to 28 minutes or until the egg has set. This makes the most delicious breakfast for dinner, or of course you can make this for regular breakfast. We had some tomatoes on hand, so I topped it with tomatoes and I served this with salsa. This recipe is amazing because you could really make it your own by adding veggies to this recipe or cheese or different meats. It's so good. Now we're making this chicken, broccoli, and wild rice casserole, and don't go judging this recipe on me until you try it. It is really, really good. So the first thing I grabbed from the store was a can of cream of mushroom soup. I also grabbed a can of cream of chicken soup, and then I headed over to the canned meat area and I grabbed a can of chicken. Grabbing cans of chicken like this is a great budget-friendly way to add chicken to your recipes when you're really trying to stay on a stricter budget. And then I went over to the rice area and I grabbed a box of long grain and wild rice, rice-a-roni. Or you could use really any type of rice-a-roni you like for this recipe. Then I went over to the frozen veggies and I wanted to grab a frozen bag of broccoli florets, but they only had the frozen broccoli cuts, so I just grabbed those broccoli cuts. Let's head back to the house and get started. To this big bowl, add in the box of long grain and wild rice. Also add in the seasoning packet that comes with that rice. Then you're going to want to add in the bag of frozen broccoli that we got from the store, followed by the can of chicken. After you add that chicken in, add in your can of cream of mushroom and cream of chicken soup. After you're through adding both of those cans in, add in 1 cup of water. And then after you add that water in, go ahead and add in your seasonings. You could really use any type of seasonings you like, but I added in a teaspoon of onion powder and garlic powder and paprika, and then a half a teaspoon of salt and pepper. Then you're going to want to give this a really good stir. I'll set this to the side. I pulled out my 9x13 baking dish and I'll spray it with plenty of nonstick spray. After you're through spraying this, go ahead and add the casserole right in there. And then after you add that casserole in there and kind of spread it out evenly, cover this with aluminum foil and bake this in a preheated oven to 350 degrees for about 50 to 60 minutes or until the rice is nice and tender. Here's the finished product. This isn't a super thick, dense casserole. It's a little bit more thin and my family really enjoys it like that. I topped mine with a little bit of cheese that I had on hand. This is so flavorful and delicious. I promise you are going to love it just as much as we do. Now we're making this tomato bacon Alfredo, and the first thing we're going to be grabbing from the store is about a pound of pasta. And I don't know what your shelves look like at your store for pasta, but I don't typically have a ton of selection, so I was going to buy a pound of fettuccine pasta, but they only had this linguine, so I just got that instead. Next, I grabbed a can of petite diced tomatoes. This is a petite diced tomatoes with olive oil and garlic, so it's going to give this dish a lot of flavor. Now we're going to be grabbing a jar of Alfredo sauce. This is about 16 ounces of that Alfredo sauce. And then grab one of these packages of real bacon bits. It's about $1.70 total, so it is a pretty good price. The first thing I'm doing is boiling up our pasta in this pot of water. I'm just boiling it according to the box instructions, nothing special. But while that pasta is cooking away, I am starting on the sauce. So to this large pan, I added my jar of Alfredo right in there, and there's always so much sauce left over in these jars, so I don't always show this on camera, but I typically like to add some water to my jar, give it a shake, and then add the excess sauce right into the pan. Then I added in my can of petite diced tomatoes. I did partially drain that can. Last thing I did was add most of those bacon bits into the pan. I gave this a stir and I let this simmer covered for about 5 minutes. I did stir often while it was simmering, but after that simmering time was up, my house was smelling so good. I can't even explain it to you. It really was smelling good. But then I added in my drained pasta. I gave this a stir and then it was time to serve it up. Here's what dinner looks like, and if you know me, you probably know by now how much I love pasta dishes. One thing I love about this pasta dish is it almost has kind of like a smoky flavor about it from the bacon. It is just super duper good. You gotta give this one a try. I'm sure you're going to love it. I hope you found this video helpful today, and I have plenty more videos like this for you and your friends on my channel, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any more in the future, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.